We did 3 shorts on the pledges that were made by Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates and Qatar during the visit of Donald Trump to these countries. The numbers looked impressive. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia said they would invest 1 trillion, Qatar 1.2 trillion and UAE 1.4 trillion. Then we started thinking, wait a minute, their GDP isn't this big. How are they going to manage these investments, even assuming they're going to be doing it over a period of time? So we went back to our drawing board, we did some math, calculations, typical trends, and this slide deck tells you all about their capacity to be able to invest, and the numbers are going to surprise you. Before we start looking at the slides, a small request to all of you to please like this video, and if you have not subscribed to our channel, do subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much. Who was Parashurama, who led a life of devotion, dedication and daring? Why did he take birth on the earth? Was it to eradicate corrupt Kshatriya rulers who had become tyrannical and oppressive, or was it to bestow daya for the needy? Gulf investment pledges. What is the reality? What is the real economic capacity of these 3 countries to match their words? Well, we needed to assess their investment capacity, so we used unified, economically consistent analysis of the investment pledges made by the UAE, Saudi Arabia and Qatar towards the United States. It includes hard ceilings, historical behavior, realistic future capacity and sector-wise allocation. So this is a fairly serious document. It took us several days to put this thing together. The methodology used, and this is identically applied to all 3 countries. First, determine each country's sovereign wealth fund assets, SWF. Then apply global SWF allocation limits. These numbers vary between 5 to 15% and it varies from country to country, exposure per foreign country. So for looking at the number, we looked at that specific country's behavior in the past on how much of the percentage they allocated towards that. Then a separate direct sovereign capital, their own equity from total project flows, which include sovereign funding plus US co-financing, loans and private equity. So we are also assuming that while these countries put money in the United States, the US is also going to jump in with co-financing, loans as well as some US private equity investors. And then compare these realistic numbers with the political headline announcements such as 1.4 trillion by UAE, 1.2 trillion by Qatar and 1 trillion by Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So let's take a look at the first one, which is the biggest amount, 1.4 trillion. United Arab Emirates. The GDP of UAE in 2025 is approximately 569 billion. They're pledging almost 2.5 times of their money. And its combined sovereign wealth fund assets under management, this is Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, Mubadala, ADQ, ICD, EIA and so on and so forth, the total is 1.8 trillion. Do you see realistically 1.4 trillion out of this being invested in US? I think not. So let's look at the numbers from how they have been doing it in the past. A 1.4 trillion 10-year UAE US investment has been pledged. 5 to 5% slice of the 1.8 trillion, remember we told you about the total assets, it comes to 90 to 270 billion dollars, and this is the economic ceiling, while realistic UAE direct capital over 10 years is 200 to 300 billion. That means you divide 200 by 10, that is 20 billion, or you divide 300 by 10, that is 30 billion. That's the most we think they can put into United States. So over this period of 10 years, instead of 1.4 trillion coming in, the number that might be more realistic is somewhere in the middle, $250 billion. Now, after accounting for US co-financing, total project flows are estimated at 350 to 550 billion dollars. So basically, we are assuming that US private equity and other co-loans that will be in the range of 150 to 250 billion dollars. So that is the number for UAE. What are the sectors they are planning on allocating into? Artificial intelligence and tech data centers, 120 to 180 billion. Energy, oil, gas, hydrogen, etc., 80 to 120 billion. Infrastructure, real estate, 40 to 80 billion. Manufacturing, industrial, 40 to 70 billion. Defense, space, cyber, 20 to 40 billion. Healthcare and biotech, 10 to 20 billion. Now let's take a look at Saudi Arabia. We will revisit the numbers for all three countries at the end, where we will summarize pledged amount to actual amount. Saudi Arabia's GDP in 2025 is approximately 1.27 trillion, and its Public Investment Fund (PIF) manages an estimated 0.9 to 1.15 trillion in assets. The political pledge includes nearly 1 trillion in US investment commitments, according to the White House. This was released in 2025 after Trump's visit. An 8 to 12% allocation of the Public Investment Fund would yield $80 to $130 billion in direct Saudi capital, representing the economic hard ceiling. After including US co-financing, total project flows are estimated at 180 billion to 300 billion over a period of 10 years. So, where does this money go in? Same qualifications: energy, nuclear, petrochemicals, etc., 60 to 100 billion. AI, cloud, data centers and chips, 35 to 60 billion. Industrial and manufacturing, 30 to 50 billion. Infrastructure and logistics, 20 to 40 billion. Defense and aerospace, 15 to 25 billion. Finance, healthcare and other, 20 to 25 billion. So that is Saudi Arabia for you. Now let's take a look at Qatar. Qatar's GDP in 2025 is approximately $240 billion. Yeah, you heard that right. And the Qatar Investment Authority (QIA) manages an estimated 530 to 560 billion in assets. Qatar Investment Authority has pledged 500 billion in US investments over 10 years, and the US fact sheet cites a 1.2 trillion economic exchange between the two countries. Now assume that 10 to 15% allocation takes place from QIA. That comes to between 50 to 80 billion dollars in direct Qatari capital. After including US co-financing, total project flows are estimated at 110 to 160 billion dollars over 10 years. Even if you assume the high end, right, 160 billion, and that this assumes inputs from US also, that's nowhere close to 1.2 trillion that they promised. Nowhere close. So where is Qatar investing all its money? In LNG petroleum, 35 to 55 billion dollars. AI tech, 20 to 35 billion dollars. Real estate, 20 to 30 billion dollars. Infrastructure and utilities, 10 to 20 billion. And finance, healthcare and others, 15 to 25 billion. So if you look at it broadly, there are 5 or 6 categories under which all the investment is coming in. So now let's bring it all in and look at what was pledged and what is realistic. The Gulf pledges of 1.4 trillion for UAE, 1 trillion for Saudi, and 1.2 trillion for Qatar are political headlines. They are not liquid capital. I hope President Donald Trump realizes that. It sounds great when countries say that they are going to be bringing in so much capital to invest. They don't have that kind of money. The real money each can deploy is UAE between 200 to 300 billion, Saudi between 80 to 130 billion, and Qatar between 50 to 80 billion. Well, you can tell me that's a lot of money. Yes, that's a lot of money, but that's not going to be all money from KSA or Qatar or UAE alone. That's going to be having a lot of co-financing from US as well as private equity. And you add that in, UAE goes between 350 to 550 billion, Saudi between 180 to 300 billion, and Qatar between 110 to 160 billion. So there isn't much here, and beyond the political headlines that $1 trillion are coming in from Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, there isn't really much to cheer here. The unified conclusion is these numbers are consistent with sovereign wealth allocation rules, historical FDI behavior, domestic obligations. Remember, Saudi has a Vision 2030 plan, and that is not going according to plan. We know that the development in the city NEOM has been completely stopped after sinking billions into it. US's absorptive capacity, how much can US absorb, and risk diversification norms. What are all the different ways in which they can diversify the risk? The 5 categories are more or less the 5 categories. They are all pretty consistent, and these are considered to be the ones that are going to be really driving the world economies forward. So there's nothing wrong there. All I am trying to say is, while America and Americans are grateful to these 3 countries for their generous investments into the country, it must be kept in mind that the numbers pledged to the numbers actually that will be allocated are very far apart. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.